Welcome back after the lunch break. We are still on a conference, MS Tech Summit online part, and after the break we'll learn some new things about power apps, which gain more popularity nowadays. And our teacher on this topic will be Dawid Ziółkowski, who works as an architect at Zoya IT. As before, you can post your question to the David on a chat, and I will transfer my voice to the David, and David make a show.
Thanks, Mateusz. Hey guys, welcome. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to have the chance to share my knowledge about some useful tips and tricks about the Power Apps. Because of the time, this part about me, it will be really short. So I'm working with the business process automations, digitalization, process transformations for a while, and I have around 4.5 years of the experience in the Power Platform overall. I'm still the Microsoft MVP. I'm a co-producer, co-organizer of the Baltic Power Platform community, where we are meeting monthly with the Power Platform end users. And the funny thing about me is that I forgot to resume my Power Platform Functional Consultant exam, and I need to pass it again. If you want to connect with me on the social media, on the screen you see various details, and I am still active breaker and b-boy, so I like to move a little bit after spending the time next to the PC. Okay, jumping to the agenda in a couple of seconds. First of all, as with every type of the good workout, let's start with the warm-up. And for that, we'll use the forms control, and I will show you a couple of the hidden properties. Next, we'll move to the index function. I will show you how the index function is working and how you can utilize it in your work. Next, we'll jump to the hidden power of the lookup. I will show you how you can utilize this function to create good collections of the data. Next, the parsing JSON, a better, quicker way how to do it, except of what was described in the documentation is of course working, but I found a little bit better way. And last but not least, if you ever work with the ForAll function, maybe like I did, you had the need to create or to use maybe the variables inside of this process. And I will show you how you can mimic that. Okay, couple of the considerations before we will kick off really the main part of the presentation. Why it is really useful. From the performance perspective, from the future and the maintenance perspective, from the architecture perspective, this is all what is worth to know. And when you want to step up your game, building a new, better Power Apps, it is always good to learn about the functions, about the limitations of the functions, so you will always make good decisions. It is also lesser moving parts, so sometimes you can avoid jumping to the Power Automate or other services, which is making your solutions easier to move and easier to maintain. And of course, this is fun. Learning a new stuff is fun. The first one, and I will now move to my demo part. I will make this screen even bigger so you can see that in a good way. The first use case maybe, and the first part which I wanted to show you is when the users need to have the custom ID based on the SharePoint ID. If you never work with the SharePoint previously, whenever you are creating a new item, system is adding also this type of the ID to your items, to your records. And sometimes it is useful to create this custom ID with some kind of the prefix, for instance, your department or the author or any other type of the needs which you can have in your mind. So far, what I saw, demo. So far, what I saw was that people were using the Power Automate to do that job. And as you saw, I created the item and the custom ID has been generated in the instant. And that can be done quite easily by utilizing the function or the property of the form. So here we are in the Power Apps designer. If I will move here to the control of the form, this form have some set of the properties. And one of these properties is onSuccess. And we should always use the onSuccess when we are submitting the form. So the stream of the action is as follows. First, user clicks submit form, which triggers the function submit form. And when the data are submitted on the onSuccess, we are performing the other operations. So this is really important to know that we are using the onSuccess. And onSuccess, I have the following code. I'm using the with function, which can create in the context of this function temporary variable, which is maintained only in the memory of the application for the execution of this function when it is executed. And to the memory, I'm adding the last submit. So I'm referring to my form control. I'm adding the dot and the last submit. The last submit is basically the last submitted record, and the form is storing the information about that. Thanks to that, I can say that I want to do the update with the patch function to my last submitted action, last submitted item, and I can add the custom ID. So we can do, and we can go with, for instance, MS Tech Summit. Quite long prefix, but let's see if this will work. Not necessarily it will work here from the application itself, but when we will publish it and when it will surface in the SharePoint, it should add this prefix. And that would be the first property which I wanted to show to you. The next one, which is also quite useful, and maybe I will now jump back to my screen where the users are in the interaction with the form. You can see here that the button of the submission is currently disabled. It is like that because if I will turn on this hidden values, the form is not valid. Form don't contain all of the mandatory information. So if I will go with the demo 2, it will say that I can submit that information because the form is valid. If I will change, for instance, the impact to high, I have a new property which I need to provide, which is making this form not valid. So let's check this out. Valid, false. Then if I will provide the number of the impacted users, form is again valid. So this is quite easy to access. Okay, still not refreshed. Let's refresh. This is quite easy to access because if we'll go here, we are again utilizing the SharePoint form, so the form control, and its property valid. It is easy as that. You can control the user behavior based on the fact if the form is valid or not. And the last one, which you already saw, is, oh, come on, demo gods. Yeah. The last one is when I am starting to type something in the form. Again, if I will show you this hidden label, I have the access to the unsaved property. It is checking if the details which are required are provided to the form, and it is also checking if any type of the changes happened inside of the form. So this is a good way how we can extend the user experience, and we can show the users, hey, you applied some changes, please make sure that you will save that. Okay, the prefix thing is working. That's neat. And the label, which is displaying the form data that are unsaved, if we'll click it here, it will show because it detects that we change something inside of our form. As in the previous case, This is quite interesting. What happened here? Okay. Okay. Here, I am just again referring to the form control that unsafe. So with unsafe, I can detect if the user changed anything or not. Okay, this is the warm-up, and we just finish it. So I will not spend a lot of time here in the slide deck. You can see the summary of what I just described, the last submit, valid, and unsafe. Of course, the unsafe scenarios can be more elaborated. You can provide some kind of the pop-up. You can add the notification. You can do quite a lot of things to inform the user that they didn't save their data and they can lost the changes. Of course, don't forget about the onSuccess property. This is where we want to change the other things. Okay, the next step in our journey is the index function. Index function, here I made a note that this is the replacement of the last and first and combination of the functions. The index function is basically allowing us to take the specific record from our table. If I want to take the second, I am using the to value in the index function. So I'm taking the second element from my table. And to get that better, I prepared another demo. Let's go here, the demo app, and that is quite silly, but it is showing that the idea, the months generated with the number of the month. This is one of the requirements which I had in the past. Here we have a little bit more functions, but that is quite easy to get. Again, using the with functions as the temporary storage of the values, where I am utilizing the month-long table. This is like something to what we have the access out of the box, the list of the months. But I want to also assign the numbers to that month. And for that, I am using the sequence function. So I am using the sequence function, which is generating me the table of the 12 elements. If I will make it bigger a little bit, one, can I please? Yes. Okay. So here we have the table with the 12 elements. I am renaming the value, the results of this function. So it is easier for me to work with that. So this is the month numbers. And I'm based on the collection of my table. I'm adding the additional column where I'm looking for the month with the specific number. So if my sequence is like in the third iteration, I am getting the access to March. If it is like the fourth, it is April, and so on. This is possible because of the combination of the first and the last functions. So if this function would be like hard-coded, it could be like this. So I am taking the second element. I want to take the third element. Sorry, the three elements, because this is taking the three elements, and this is like taking the 4 elements. And with the last function, it is taking this last one. So I'm taking 1, 2, 3, 4, and I am then grabbing the last one. This is like quite cumbersome because the bigger the number of the items in my collection, the more memory this is taken to perform this operation. And much better option is to do almost exactly the same, but with the index function. So the index function is saying to me exactly which item I want to take from my collection. It is not taking the n number of the items and then grabbing the last one. It is just taking the correct number from the collection. So if I will change that, for instance, to 5, it will grab May for me. And this is the whole idea how the index is working. It is taking one record, not the stack and then filtering that in some sense, but just one record. More useful example, it will be here. If I will generate the item or I will create the item, so we have the demo 1, node description, demo2 description, and so on. So we have the situations that we want to have the sort number in our galleries to show the items. But if we just click remove this bin, which is removing the item, you can see that the sorting number is not correct. It is not updated. It is creating some kind of the gap in the user experience. So for instance, if I would have more items, I just generated more items, and I'm deleting the item number 5, 6, and 7, then I have the gap in the sorting number. And this is not ideal. But if I will click, for instance, the second bin, come on, almost good. Something is happening, demo gods. Okay, this time it worked finally, more or less. Why it is not working? Come on. Okay, it finally made the updates almost correctly. Okay, something happened, but but I will show you the idea. And I think I know what could happen here, but let's leave that for a second. The idea was that I'm again using the record. I'm again using the with function with the records table, and for every element which I would have to the update, I would perform some kind of the change. And the number of my updates would depend on the count elements of this collection, of this table. Thanks to the sequence function, I'm again using the table, and I can iterate through that table. And here, the idea was to update every element based on the index, based on the location in my collection. So I don't know why it is not working right now. I will try to do it one more time. Generate and just remove. This time it worked. Okay. Here it is jumping one. A little bit bizarre behavior. It worked a couple of seconds ago. So let's move on. I will not try to debug that, but I wanted to leave you with one thing. The index function is not delegatable. So if you have more than 500 elements in your collection, the index function will not work. So if I would like to take the last element potentially in this function, it doesn't return any type of the data. If I would use the lookup function, which is under the delegation, it will return me the element from my collection. If I will change that to any other ID, it will still work. So the index function is working under the delegation rules. Here you can see the errors connected with the execution of this function because of the delegation problems. And if you are working with the power-ups, understanding of how the delegation is working is one of the key bits which you should handle when you want to take your power-ups game to a next level. Okay, and with this slightly failed demonstration, unfortunately, we can move to the next one, to the lookup function. Hopefully this one will work. The idea of this demonstration is that I have the two lists. One is like a parent or the main list, and the second one is like the child list. And if I will create in the parent couple of the additional elements, I can also generate to my child list some kind of the content. Between these two lists, there is the connection of this number. So this is the number which is connecting the information. If you will check this out, the number here and here is the same. And when I was working with the Power Apps, I noticed the following thing, that people were using sometimes the galleries where they were showing the child elements, and they wanted to show some kind of the one property on one information from the main list. And to achieve that, they were adding the lookup function to a label. And if we will try now to run the Power Apps monitor, this is very useful when you are working with the Power Apps. And if we will return to the application and we'll start to scroll, okay, there is not enough content. Let's try to generate more. So I will add 8 more. Okay, we have some content. And if I will start to scroll, it should add the lookup functions as I'm adding more data, as I'm scrolling through the data. So every time when the screen content is loaded and I'm starting to scroll, it is executing the function. So this is quite consuming, and it is consuming quite a lot of resources and quite heavy for the performance. Next, when I was playing with this concept, I noticed that when you will use the items of the gallery, you can create the virtual collection, which is not connected with your data even, or it might be connected, or it can be based on your data, but you can use also the virtual collections. You can extend your collections with the add columns function, and of course the lookup. But in this case, if we will check the monitor, this is even heavier. So if I will, or maybe it is already in the memory, so it is not a perfect example, but overall, it would fetch the lookup function for all of the rows which you have in your collection. So it is even I wouldn't use that in the production. But with this finding, I knew that you can utilize the same pattern in the case of creation of the collections. So you can have one collection, and thanks to adding the additional column to your collection and using the lookup function, you can grab the data from the other tables. So in one collection, you can have the data from the multiple sources, and this is really great. So this is helping a lot. If I will click it here, it will show me the same results, but it have the concatenation, let's say, of the usage in the production scenarios. And this is what I will show you. If I will return to my presentation, this is the use case where I utilize this technique. Basically, I have the structure, which I will show you again in a couple of seconds. I have the structure where I have the user audit. The user audit is connected with the GUID ID of the modules data. Here you can see these green boxes and arrows. And every module have also the information about the BU, the business unit, which is connected with every module. And the information about the BUs and the full name of the BUs is stored in another table, the content creators management, which is the blue boxes. And in the function which you see on my screen at the moment, I am creating a new collection where the two columns of this new collection are taking the information from the modules list for first, and secondly from the content editors. And both of these cases are slightly different. As in the case of green one, I am fetching the whole record. So I am taking all of the metadata connected with the modules. But in the second one, I'm using that to grab only a single property, because the lookup functions with the third parameter, it is returning you not a whole record, but a property of that record. So we can either grab the whole record or we can grab one property. And to show you that better, let's get back to my desktop. This is the online academy. This is the structure. So like I was saying, the content creators keep the information about the BU full name. The modules keep the information about all of the modules. And the user audit is storing the data about the quizzes, the modules which users resolved. So every time when somebody is completing the module, that information is stored in the user audit. Here we have the content creators, the BU full name, it is stored here. And the last one, of course, the modules, which is having the ID and the BU short name. Inside of the application, thanks to utilization of this technique, I can show to users in the gallery the content from the three different tables. I don't need to do the label approach or any other. I am just fetching that information once, though it is quite consuming for the performance, but it is allowing you to grab either the whole record from another table or to get a single property. So this is the hidden power of the lookup functions. I hope you like it, and I hope it will be useful for you in your implementations. But please remember, this is a little bit cheating, because the SharePoint is not the database. It is not the relationship database. It is only mimicking the behavior of the relationship database, and this is a little bit like a cheat. Okay. So a small summary, worth to remember that if you are using the third parameter of in the lookup function, it will return a single property. I know that this is quite common to use this notation with the dot, but it is slightly slower from the performance perspective. Okay, and now the parsing of JSON. This is quite new function. This is quite fresh for the platform itself. It is still in the experimental mode. So you shouldn't use that in the production, but knowing this function should help you quite a lot. And soon it will be general available, and you will be able to use this in your solutions. So how we can use that? I prepared the whole demo around that. So basically here I am collecting the data. I am changing them to a JSON format. And next, I have the two methods how I can parse that. And before clicking, okay, I hope it will change. I will close this one. Interesting. Okay, let's try to play it one more time, and let's see if it will display in the right way. I have no idea why it is displaying like that. Okay, guys, I will reload that. This is why I wanted to have that loaded first. Okay, so let's click through it, and let's try to run the monitor in the background. One more time. Collect the items, create JSON, and then we are parsing that. So we are again changing or reading the JSON to the format which is digestible for the Power Apps. In the way how the documentation is describing that, you would need to use the ForAll function for every element in your parse data. You also need to cast the information for the system because it is not recognizing the data initially. After parsing the JSON, just after this action, you are getting the untyped object. So you need to cast that for the Power Apps to understand what is happening. And even when you will do this first step, it is still not getting what type of the data you have there. So the casting continues. In the next step, for instance, here, I am saying that my property text is a text property, and this is what I'm taking out from the JSON. This is working like for every element one by one. And if the monitor is on, if I will try to do it one more time, I will clear the data. Okay, add the data, create the JSON, and hit this one. Okay, so see, this is like repeating the same operation quite a lot of times. Depending on the number of the items which you have in your memory, this will repeat as many times as you have that in the memory. Then the alternative method, if I will click that, it is like, boom, job done. Let's repeat that. And job done. So with utilization of the function collect, we are getting the same result, but we are not forcing the Power Apps to perform such a heavy operation. Again, the casting of the data after parsing need to happen. But what is happening next? I'm extending the information which I get with the additional columns. The first column is, of course, the property number, and the second one is the property text. So with that, I am adding the additional columns to my collection, which I have currently, and I am just reading the data because the add columns is allowing me to understand where I am in my collection. Additional operation is that I am removing this value column. So if I will highlight that one more time, here I have this value column. I don't need that value column. That is why I am just dropping that out. Okay, here we have. This is the way how you can parse the JSON data much faster. The last step in our journey is basically how you can use the ForAll, and inside of the ForAll, how you can run or how you can mimic the access to the variables. And for that, I need to also open this data. Okay, so we have the list where I am saving only the GUID and I have the status. If I will execute this one and I will go to my list, you will see that initially this is only the GUID and the status is empty. It is like that because I'm submitting all of the child items to a supporting list, and only when the process is finished, it is changing the status to the done. I had the 2 elements in my main list. That is why it created 2 records. And the behind the scene, it added to a secondary list it added all of the items. Sorry, I can just newer to outer. Yeah, so you can see here, it is adding quite a lot of information to this child list. And it is also storing the parent ID, the SharePoint parent ID. And that was achieved in the following way. Okay. First approach is with the collect. So in my main or the parent collection or parent data, I'm performing the operation, but every operation which I am performing, in this case, a creation of new record, I am enveloping that with the collect function. So every time when the patch is executed, it also returns you the information about the record which was created. And I'm grabbing that to my collection. Next, for every element, for every child element which is associated with the parent list, I am creating also a new record, but this time as one of the properties of this child records, I am passing the parent ID, which I am taking from my freshly created collection. Because I'm using the last element which pop into the collection, I know that I am like working in the correct in the context of the correct item. With that, in some sense, I'm using the collection as the variable. And the last element of this solution, if we'll go down, maybe if I'll do it in this way. Yeah. The last element is that after the execution of creation of all of the child items, I am updating the status of the correct item because still I'm referring to my, let's say, variable collection. And this method is quite neat because you can utilize later on all of the information from the collection which was created when you were creating the records. But there is the alternative version of that, of the with function. Again, utilizing the with function, I can create the temporary variable, which is like existing only during the function execution. So this is again used like the variable. So I created a new parent element and I store that in the memory thanks to the with function. After that, the process is almost exactly the same. So I'm passing the parent ID and I'm making the update of the new record. And thanks to the connection of these functions, we can in some sense mimic the variables inside of the ForAll loop. Okay, and that would be it. I don't know how I'm sitting with the time, let's say, how much time is left.
I would say that we are running out of the time.
Sorry, guys.
So please just briefly summary and we will have to finish.
Okay, so basically I show you a couple of the basic techniques. Along the lines you saw that the collect, add columns, with function, these are the basics of working with the power-ups if you want to take your game to a next level. If you want, ask the additional questions, just hit me up through my social channels. You can also check my blog because part of these methods which I describe here are like decomposed in my blogs. And see you soon tomorrow because I will have the pleasure to show you the Power Cards, which is a new member of the Power family. Thanks for watching.
Okay, David, thank you very much for your presentation. Thanks for watching. And as I said, we are running out of the time, so thank you very much and don't forget to rate David's presentation. See you after the break.